What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. Today is August 24th, 2021. And in this episode, I am joined by Teodor Tsenov. How you doing today, Teodor?
I'm fine, man. Great to be here, and of course, ready for another round of analysis of NFL, of wrestling, of everything, pretty much.
Yeah, there is so much to talk about. I knew I had to get you on my show as soon as possible because, the amount of wrestling headlines is absolutely insane right now. This is honestly probably the most headlines we've had in, wrestling in honestly years with, the insane amount of returns and, storyline possibilities. And, we have to start the show with the biggest topic. In my opinion, I know I might sound biased because I'm a wrestling fan, but in my opinion, this is the biggest storyline in sports over the past week. It's the biggest wrestling return in my opinion, decades. That is CM Punk returning to AEW and becoming rep. He hasn't wrestled for over 7 years, and he made his wrestling comeback this past Friday on AEW Rampage. What are your thoughts on CM Punk returning to professional wrestling?
Well, it's obviously gonna be. I don't know. It's gonna be a needle mover, as a lot of people. I don't know. This is not gonna be a move that's gonna push AEW like over WWE. Everybody knows that. But it's so consequential. It's so impactful for mostly for AEW and for the wrestling world overall. First off, what a great way to number one, get your resume, improve the resume of your show, like Rampage, which you're still promoting as something that's close to importance and quality to Dynamite, but at the same time, it's hard for it to be in the same level because it starts at 10 p.m. It's the number one to show without any doubt. But with those kind of moments like this, fans might start to think that the things that happen on Rampage are close to what happens on Dynamite. But at the same time, when you have that that his debut be on Rampage, you'll know that and then you promote him for Dynamite. You increase the number of eyeballs that are gonna watch Dynamite this upcoming Wednesday. It's also pretty good that it's also, you have to like the way that they introduce him, because it's always this thing when you have returns, like wrestling is really wrestling is closer to a TV show than to a sporting event. Although this is generally the way that you're trying to promote anything on television. Even people who within traditional team sports have said that they're trying to use these kind of techniques from that are from TV shows to build storylines. Everything on television is storylines, and people also in sports, but there are less opportunities to fail there. And mostly in TV shows make the same mistake very often when they introduce back a very like a big character from the past or a big name from the past. They fail to do. They only have him as a cameo. He only appears, but he doesn't have any impact on what happens. And it's and although I was very hesitated at first when he saw him immediately appear when the crowd was chanting his name, and at the same time at the moment when everybody pretty much in the wrestling world knew that he was going to appear, I saw enough to believe that that he's gonna be that he was introduced immediately into a part of a storyline. He is immediately placed against Darby Allin. They even formalized the match at All Out. So having him impact the current wrestlers and the current storylines This is something that that Darby Allin noted at a few weeks ago. This is something that is absolutely the right move, because especially for a guy like CM Punk, who hasn't been hot, like he hasn't been on wrestling television for 7 years. He doesn't have as much momentum as he would have had if he had if his last appearances were in 2020 or 2021. You need to introduce that big name in a way that, because CM Punk might not have more than 5 years as a big name, but you have to use his presence to improve, to get over other names, other characters, other wrestlers on your roster. And I saw enough to believe that this was the case right off the door, right off the bat with CM Punk. Overall, mm, because the crowd reaction was expected, I'd say that a pretty decent debut from CM Punk, had pretty good impact on AEW's assets, television and pay-per-view, and it absolutely did its task. Now, what's gonna happen going forward? That there is a lot to be seen there.
Yeah, CM Punk, the last time he was on wrestling television was back in 2014, and that was when I started watching wrestling. I believe his last match was the Royal Rumble or something like that around 2014, and I started the first time I watched wrestling was the night after WrestleMania of 2014. So I never actually got to watch him wrestle during his tenure with WWE. But looking at some of his promos and some of his matches, you can tell why everybody loved him so much. He was one of the best characters in professional wrestling at his time. He was a very, very intriguing, one of the best guys, who has one of the best mic skills. You think of wrestlers the past decade or so who has some of the best mic skills. In my opinion, CM Punk, Jericho, and Cena, right up the Miz, those guys are towards the top of the list. But CM Punk returning to AEW, it's really crazy, because AEW, it's not even been AEW Dynamite has not even been on TV for 2 years yet on TNT. And, when it first started, some people thought, this is this won't last. This might be some of the kind of like the wrestling companies in years past. And I'm very surprised, by this. This was something we've really heard from the beginning when AEW started. Anytime there's rumors in wrestling about the possibility of a big time signing, everybody automatically mentioned CM Punk's name, because he was that big of a star, and he's not wrestled in 7 years, and it just goes to show how big of a star he was. And the fact that, that finally the rumors were true and everything, he gets to debut in his hometown in Chicago, it is absolutely massive for him, and really shows how much, I would say, he believes in AEW, because, he said in interviews many, many times that he never plans on returning to wrestling again. He comes back in his hometown. He's going to have his first match in his hometown as well at All Out, like you mentioned. I don't think anybody could have possibly imagined, realistically and honestly, that AEW would have signed CM Punk. Like 2 years ago, nobody would have expected this to happen. And the fact that now they have CM Punk, there's rumors Daniel Bryan has signed with AEW. There's way, way, way more rumor signings. We'll talk about that later. But this is massive. And you mentioned the match with Darby Allin. I really feel like that is extremely important, because CM Punk, he debuts, and in my opinion, he's automatically a top 2 biggest star in wrestling right now. And you can make a case for number 1. That's if John Cena is done for a while. But with CM Punk, you have eyes on AEW television. You have CM Punk gets his name out there, recognition, that he never really lost. He's getting merchandise sales. AEW's getting merchandise sales. I looked on eBay the other day. The T-shirts that they sell at wrestling live events are normally like $25 or $30 on eBay. They're selling for over $200. So the way they did, they're making so much money from this. And with going back to the Darby Allin, I love that so much, because you're building your stars in the process. You look at some of these young talents in AEW. In my opinion, you look at the top future guys in AEW. MJF, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy is probably up there. And, you look at those guys. If CM Punk has a feud with some of those guys, when you have a feud with CM Punk, your recognition, you're automatically much higher after you have a feud with one of the top wrestlers in the world. So you're helping your case become a bigger wrestler while you're having eyes on the product and CM Punk. Lots of people don't give really AEW credit. Lots of these guys, let's say like Chris Jericho and Moxley, Cody Rhodes, people will say, AEW hasn't created their own stars. But when you have a guy like CM Punk, he's going to help make these stars like Darby Allin, Guevara, MJF 10 times more popular and really get their names, mainstream like a Moxley and a Jericho. To me, this was just brilliant by CM Punk, AEW. And, we're going to talk about those signings in a little bit, like I mentioned. But if some of these signings are true, WWE is always going to be the main wrestling company. Nobody really can deny that. But I really feel like with some of these possible signings and with CM Punk, the ratings war, I guess you would call it, could possibly be much closer than we think when it goes to Monday Night Raw. SmackDown's a different story, but Monday Night Raw and AEW Dynamite could be very, very interesting in months to come.
Yeah, well, though with SmackDown, if SmackDown really, SmackDown is not comparable for some reason that it's on broadcast television, but if it's even near 2 million, even below 2 million, that means it's in cable, on cable. I'm sorry. It would have been at least remotely close. So that is at least an alarming sign for WWE. Now, Raw, on the other hand, has ratings have gone down at a much higher rate, much faster rate, and they have been. You can make the case that things there have been that have been on the downturn. For a couple of months now, except for when crowds came back. Yet it's everything on cable, or let's say everything on television across the board. Like the reason WWE, the reason for much of the rating decline of WWE television is the rating decline across all of television. AEW to a huge extent is going up just because it started from scratch. Has only started. Dynamite has only been on television for about 2 years, and after it went over 1 million in its first broadcast, then it went down, and before the pandemic, it only touched 1 million twice. Then after the pandemic started, it went even below 800,000. It touched 700,000. It goes up to a big extent for two reasons. One is that because it started from scratch. The other is because it has very few because it doesn't have other assets. WWE might not prioritize television. But yet, the success that SummerSlam had throughout this past weekend that we're going to talk about in a little bit shows that they rely on much more than television. Although I have to say, because we said last time out when I was on this show that WWE don't use the same methods. Like they don't traditional wrestling. They don't put traditional wrestling on television because they're not a traditional wrestling company. They're a sports entertainment company that target different audience, use different methods, and because of that, their product just looks different for people who are serious about wrestling. This looks cringy and they don't like it, but there's another people who WWE targets, and even in now more than ever since maybe the Attitude Era, things have been like that with WWE, or even before the Attitude Era. And it's interesting to see even despite that why ratings are still going down, despite them going full out on their on the craft that they have mastered, which is different from traditional wrestling. And it's interesting to see to what extent the ratings are gonna continue going down, and then we're really gonna see how much how big of a reason the TV the rating decline across all of television. How big of a reason is that, and how big of a reason really their methods not working, whatever the audience targeted. How big of a reason that is.
And it's very interesting with SmackDown being on, basically cable TV, and everybody gets, Fox and everything. Everybody's able to watch that if they have a TV. The one thing about, TNT that not everybody, gets that. And that's what makes it really interesting because, with SmackDown, their numbers actually, should be up a lot more. They signed a huge company with Fox, a huge contract with Fox years ago. And, their ratings not really been what people expected to be. Raw has just really been on decline, in my opinion, since really 2017. It's never been the same since 2016 and 17. But with WWE and with these signings in AEW, it just makes it so interesting, with, the CM Punk signing and, the other, debuts, going on the next topic here with Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch back in WWE. It makes it so interesting because competition can get the best out of each other, which is good because, you have CM Punk come back on AEW, first time he's been on TV in over 7 years. The next night, WWE surprises us in having Brock Lesnar return, the first time he's been on TV in a year and a half. And, Becky Lynch comes back, which, lots of people were surprised about Becky Lynch, but honestly, I wasn't really surprised at all. I honestly thought this was bound to happen. It made so much sense. But with Brock Lesnar coming back, it's just very interesting. We have the Roman Reigns and John Cena feud. Shockingly, Roman Reigns wins and Cena loses, and it looks like he's going to be off WWE television for quite some time, which is very, very, very surprising because as of 2 weeks ago, there was tons of articles saying Cena's back full time for a while. All of a sudden, he's gone, which is just very shocking to me. I honestly thought Cena was going to win the match, and it made the most sense because I know WWE is trying to make Roman Reigns this next type guy like Cena, who's this next megastar. But if you went eyes on the product, I think it would have been smart to some way to have Cena as a champion. Because somebody who doesn't know much about wrestling, they've at least heard the name of John Cena before. But you have Roman Reigns beat Cena. Once the match ends, Lesnar comes out. Very, very shocking to me. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I hate the fact that it's Brock Lesnar against Roman Reigns. I feel like we've seen this match and this feud way too many times in its typical WWE fashion. They're going to continue to have these same feuds and storylines. And, some people are like them, but, there's lots of fans who just get tired of the same constant feuds. For instance, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, they've had some really good matches, and their storylines, especially in NXT, were great, but we've seen them far too many times having Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens constantly be in a feud against one another. Roman Reigns and Lesnar, to me, I feel like if this was Lesnar against Bobby Lashley, this is far more intriguing than opposed to Roman Reigns. Because Lashley, the way things are going, it's really looking like Lashley is like this Brock Lesnar type of guy from 2014. All his matches are, squash matches that end in like 5 minutes or less. We saw how he humiliated Goldberg at SummerSlam and everything. But with Lesnar, I don't hate the idea of him coming back. I hate the idea of this feud with Roman Reigns. And when it comes to Becky Lynch, like I was saying, I don't get why people were so surprised. I really thought this was going to happen. The way I hate it was Sasha Banks was unable to compete in the match, and she was going up against Bianca Belair. And she's had the championship, I believe, since WrestleMania or around that time. And first of all, when Becky Lynch, announced that she was going to be off WWE TV for quite some time because she was pregnant, she relinquished her Raw Women's Championship So she had a championship match on SmackDown, which to me, I know it's something little, but to me that's kind of interesting. You know, she relinquishes the Raw title, comes back, and doesn't even do anything. Is in a title match on SmackDown, not the company she used to be, not the brand she was on, but is on a match, in a championship match against Bianca Belair, the champion for getting close to be around 6 months now. She absolutely humiliates Belair. You know, that was a squash match like we've seen, you know, what that Lashley match I just mentioned. That match, I don't even believe was 4 or 5 minutes long. You have Bianca Belair, you know, you're trying to build up young talent and you literally like blow it all away in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. To me, that does not make any sense at all. And if Becky Lynch returned, and if this match did not happen, I would be all right with it. But the fact that you've basically I don't really know how to describe it. Like you have your top talent, you're building her up to be this mega star women's wrestler like a Sasha Banks, like a Becky Lynch, like a Charlotte, and she's had a title for nearly half a year, and she's red hot right now. Nobody can really beat her. And then you have Becky Lynch come back, who's been off TV for over a year, beat her in 2 minutes, and is all of a sudden a champion. I don't understand why you're having a championship match with no match to earn it. So, I mean, that's something that goes back to WWE, like a Goldberg coming back announcing he wants a title match, he gets it type of deal. But to me, if Becky Lynch came back, I would have been fine with it. But the title thing to me that's really ticked me off about it, and with Lesnar, if he would have came back on Lashley, I would have loved it. It's I don't dislike these returns in Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch. I just really, really, really hate these feuds and storylines because to me they're very, the Lesnar one, like I mentioned, is very old and the same stuff, and the Becky Lynch one is something that we should have definitely not have seen.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, um, some people have said that those returns are to some extent in response to AEW and CM Punk. But what earthly reason is there to believe that AEW would have gained even some ground on WWE, even with the Punk return? And even with that, there is some kind of heat that you can feel towards every time that WWE does something that acknowledges. That acknowledges the emergence of AEW, but that means that just AEW gains goes a step forward, and WWE then with if they do something, they get 2 steps in front of them. So they try to neutralize everything that AEW do, and it's weird to always hear some kind of heat within the wrestling community towards that. Now the 2 returns, it's mixed feelings would probably describe those very well, but in very different regards. Now, first of all, the returns, in essence, returns are such an important factor, such an important point of just WWE's functionality, WWE's the whole set of operations. Their corporate branding, it's called systematic corporate branding. You try to, when you tell your story, one of the ways you tell a story of your company, and then you try to have everything within your company behave like that. So WWE's tries to tell a story of people who have tried to make their dreams come true, and then they have their big moments of wrestler returning that they don't even consequences come after that. Both Lesnar and Becky Lynch returning is a perfect example of that. And perfect example of why pay-per-views like SummerSlam, or even the smaller pay-per-views, not just SummerSlam and WrestleMania, keep being so successful for the company financially, viewership wise, uh, regardless of regardless of if they are good in terms of wrestling or bad. As he said, this is the part of their corporate of the story that WWE is trying to tell uh, within the system of their branding. And they always do that. Almost all of their returns end up having very little importance. End up having very little importance of trying to get other talent over, trying to make other talent seem strong. Exactly, that is of course that is if you have an old guy who has made a name for himself on television. They never try to use that. All they're relying on is that moment, that big moment, that spectacular big moment when they return. And then this is another instance where you see that all of the feuds that come off of those returns make absolutely no sense. I absolutely agree about Lesnar and Reigns. It's just that too many of those feuds within WWE, they bring nothing. They bring nothing new to the rivalry. Lesnar and Reigns has been tried so many times. One can say that it has failed so many times, and this one seems like it's going to be nothing new. Well, it has to be said, Reigns is much better than he was the last few times when he feuded with Brock Lesnar, and it seems like neither man's character, with the exception of course that Paul Heyman is now with Roman Reigns. Nothing. There is nothing new in the two. There is nothing new as a matchup between the two, as a in the showdown that can be seen. Um, Becky Lynch, of course. This is the same way, by the way, with Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. It's exactly the same way. There is nothing new when they fight. There is nothing new to their story, to their rivalry, as opposed to 4 years ago, for example, when they were on Raw. Becky Lynch is another example of that. WWE relies very heavily on that spectacular moment. The they don't try to make it seem legitimate, because their strategy is not supposed to make their competition look legitimate. That is something that AEW will try to rely on, for example. So that's why they do some things like that with, for example, trying to just give, to just have some wrestler being unable to compete and just plug in a returning wrestler. They don't try to work on those things, because those things are not important to them. And it's pretty indicative of WWE's strategy. At the same time, as we said, it's indicative of some of their flaws. Even with their strategy, their feuds being uninteresting and really being lacking concept is gonna be an obstacle for them. Even within their strategies, lack of concept, lack of really reason to care about what you're watching is gonna bring every company, every type of product down, regardless of what its target audience is. So it's indicative also of their flaws. But SummerSlam, it was announced. It was the most viewed pay-per-view for WWE on WWE, on WWE Network and Peacock. They also sold out. They also sold out a 51,000 arena. So the if there are any there are not problems, but it shows that they succeed, not despite not embracing traditional wrestling, but because of that, because they target a different audience, and as a result they have different methods. That's why the product is so much different than any other wrestling promotion anywhere.
And kind of going back to the Lesnar and Reigns thing. You kind of mentioned, Paul Heyman being with Roman Reigns. To me, that's one interesting thing about this feud. Paul Heyman's been with Lesnar since forever, as long as I can remember. And, Paul Heyman's with Reigns now. Reigns, I completely agree. Reigns, this is the best he's been without a doubt, and easily. I'm really interested to see what Lesnar does, because Lesnar, we've kind of seen in the past, and I believe we kind of talked about it, last time you were on my show. If you watch wrestling and there's something, let's say a guy who's a great wrestler, but if he's not a good guy who's in promos, a wrestling company will hide their flaws. They hid Brock Lesnar's flaws by adding Paul Heyman with him. Brock Lesnar is not a guy, who you hear promos much of. So they kind of hid their flaws with Brock Lesnar while Heyman was with him. But to me, it makes it really intriguing because, Lesnar is no longer with Heyman. Heyman's with Reigns. This is the best Reigns has been. Lesnar's been off TV for a year and a half. I feel like this has potential to be their best feud of, I don't even know how many times they've been in the feud together. Far too many. But this just does not make sense because you're having a feud that we've seen a billion times when we just saw, in my opinion, I don't watch WWE, television much, but, I'll watch some clips and stuff. In my opinion, Reigns and Cena was the best feud WWE's had in probably about a year or so. And you end that match and you end that feud so quickly to the fact, it's just interesting because you had so much potential with that feud. It's one of the best feuds in WWE television this past year. You can honestly make a case it's one of the best WWE feuds since the pandemic started last March. And it's crazy that instead of continuing that feud with John Cena, who we thought was going to be, in WWE for quite some time, maybe a couple of months, supposedly he's already gone to Hollywood now, which is absolutely crazy. And then going back to Becky Lynch, it's this is typical WWE and having the bigger star win. Smaller people like a Bianca Belair and people like that are never going to get big if you don't give them a title. They're not going to get big if you don't put them in these huge marquee matches. WWE fans complain that they don't build up talent, and this is an exact situation like that. You have potential to build Bianca Belair, like I mentioned, some of these top women's wrestlers in WWE, and you were capable of doing it, and you were on the right path, and then you completely shut it down, and it's like that nearly 6 months reign of Bianca Belair being champion was pointless, and having her lose within 2 minutes, it's really crazy to me with the WWE and just their lack of booking. And, kind of going to our next topic here, there's lots of talks. I wouldn't say he's the biggest wrestling free agent right now, but with Brock Lesnar back in WWE, CM Punk in AEW, which just sounds crazy to sound, he's definitely one of the biggest wrestling free agents right now. That is Adam Cole. Adam Cole really helped his name last year, having a terrific feud with Pat McAfee. That was my favorite feud in WWE in quite some time. I don't watch NXT, but I watch NXT for that. Honestly, I think since the pandemic started last year, the two things that WWE did the best was make Roman Reigns heel, because this is the best he's ever been, and have Pat McAfee on WWE television. It's made it so much more intriguing and entertaining. And that feud with him and Adam Cole was just fantastic. And when Adam Cole, when he was on the Pat McAfee show last year, it was so well executed. There were people, actually thinking that wasn't a actual feud. They actually thought that was kind of, a real life situation. Which, if you're somebody who doesn't really know much about, wrestling or storylines, the way they did it, you would actually kind of would have thought that was real. It's just fantastic by them. And Adam Cole, like I said, I don't really watch NXT. I watched NXT last year for the McAfee feud, and that was really it. But, he was with, the Undisputed Era for several years. They kind of split up not too long ago. Adam Cole was pretty much the biggest guy in NXT of all time, in my opinion. Finn Balor would be up there as well. But Adam Cole has definitely made a name for himself being on NXT, not SmackDown or Raw, but basically their minor league. And it's really crazy that you have built your name up so well and you're so popular that you are the top guy in a minor league for years. And some people actually believe that you should stay in NXT because the main roster like SmackDown or Raw might ruin you. But at the same time, there's not really much anything else Adam Cole can do in NXT. Before he signed with WWE years ago, he was with the Elites and the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and those type of guys. Obviously, they're the executive vice presidents of AEW, and they have the YouTube channel, the Being the Elites. And Adam Cole was on that years ago, and the Young Bucks have kind of teased that Adam Cole will be coming back to AEW. And something also very interesting is that AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker is dating Adam Cole. I feel like that has a major implication on whether he will sign with AEW or stay with WWE. But to me, it's crazy because I feel like Adam Cole is going to AEW. It's obvious. I would be shocked if he doesn't. It just makes so much sense. I mean, going back to your best friends from years ago, going back to where your girlfriend is, and a company right now who's at an all-time high. They're getting top free agents left and right. They had CM Punk. Supposedly they've signed Daniel Bryan. There's lots of rumors about Bray Wyatt. I mean, they have definitely the hot hands right now. And if you sign Adam Cole, pair him with the Elites, or maybe build him up a little bit and have him a feud against Kenny Omega. That would be very interesting to me. I think that has potential to be a match of the year candidate. But Adam Cole and AEW, to me, I would be shocked if it doesn't happen. It makes so much sense for Adam Cole because there's not really much anything he can do left in NXT. And I mean, AEW standpoint, you get another top talent from WWE. And something else, he does not have one of those no compete clauses like some talent does. So he could actually turn up and appear at AEW Dynamite tomorrow, which is just absolutely crazy. Because just a couple of days ago, he had a match of the year candidate with WWE.
Yeah, no doubt. There are a lot of people in AEW that would that are very close to Adam Cole, right? Britt Baker, as well as the Elite, and all of that should make it very likely for him to go to AEW. This is one of the reasons why I have been surprised that there haven't been as many rumors about him going to AEW as one could expect. I also, however, see a lot of reasons for him, not for him. I see a lot of reasons for WWE to try to keep him. Okay, now it's not because of NXT. It's been rumored. It's been thought that after takeover that he's done with NXT, so he's probably not going back to NXT. They have a reason to try to they're going to feature him on their television on Raw or SmackDown, but there are a few things now. He doesn't have a non-compete clause, which means that the damage for WWE, as strange as it sounds, damage for a company like WWE from a company like AEW is gonna be a lot bigger from a guy like Adam Cole than anyone else who left WWE who had non-compete clause, whether that's 30 days or 90 days, because you get him immediately. You get him while he's incredibly hot. He has incredible momentum, and there is much more potential for him to elevate AEW as with his presence than there would have been if he had to wait 90 days. This is one of the reasons why if WWE, it's not. I mean, AEW is not really a direct competition, but they would like to limit their impact on even on the traditional wrestling landscape. Of course, if AEW is not a big name, although for now no name on the traditional wrestling landscape could be close to WWE. If there isn't anyone who is dominant on that landscape, there is nobody who could even come close to WWE. Nobody who could compete with WWE if there are a bunch of small promotions. Of course, AEW is not that. AEW has shown that it at least knows the ingredients of what would make people care about their product. WWE, nobody has any reason to believe that the main roster would use Adam Cole in any way close to how he's been used on NXT, both in terms of the way he was used and the quality with which he was used. Meaning that his career, if he goes during this week or next week's Raw, his career is probably heading into one of his worst points. Although this only goes. This is what's always interesting. This only goes as far as his the wrestling product in which he's participating. That's only if you assume that he somehow does not like this product himself, but he's probably gonna earn more money with. This is debatable, but it's likely that he's gonna earn more money with WWE. At least that's based on how big of a company that is compared to AEW. He as a name is going to be more popular. So even his career is not going to be in that bad of a place. It's only wrestling wise, and that's if you assume that he strongly opposes the WWE's product himself, which he could have mentioned. I haven't looked at that personally, but mostly because your WWE's AEW is going to get a wrestler with a lot of momentum, and because he's been rumored to have been in good relations with WWE even after his contract has expired. Now after Takeover, and his meeting with WWE higher ups have been said to have gone well. It seems like there is so many reasons for WWE to try to keep him, even if he's gonna be on the television shows, and of course if they offer him more money, that might be a better reason for him to go to WWE than his friendship with the Elite and him dating Britt Baker are to go to AEW.
And it's very interesting. I feel like AEW can benefit from signing Adam Cole a lot, but in a way, I know this sounds crazy, WWE can actually benefit more because AEW, if they get another guy like Adam Cole's caliber, like a big name, that really helps them, more eyes on the product. But WWE, if you sign him, that means, I know this sounds just really simple, but if you sign him, that means AEW doesn't, which is big. I mean, you're not getting more eyes on AEW, and you mentioned the money situation, which is very interesting. You look at guys in the past couple of years like Kurt Hawkins. He was released a year or so ago, and Gallows and Anderson were released as well, but they were offered new contracts. And Kurt Hawkins, he was talking to somebody, I believe it was a 5-year contract, and he was mentioning it was more money than he's ever received in any wrestling contract he was ever offered, because they were trying to keep him away from AEW. Adam Cole, if they're offering Kurt Hawkins, who had like a 100 losing streak in a row, I cannot imagine what they're going to offer Adam Cole, who's basically the greatest of all time NXT wrestler. I mean, that's debatable. But with Adam Cole, that is just absolutely crazy. And let's say he re-signs with WWE. He's going to make a boatload of money, far more than his contract that is now expired. I don't know if this is true or not. I was reading something. He was making $100,000, which to me, that is far too low. Somebody who has carried NXT on his back for years and years and years. And the supposedly offer, it's around $1 million or at least $1 million, which to me, that's much more acceptable. And that's what that should be. But it's interesting. It's one of those situations where it's like you can get all the money you want, but at the same time, you don't really get that creative freedom like you would in AEW. You don't really have control, and your feuds, different things like that. You might not be on TV as much, and as crazy as this sounds, Adam Cole being in WWE's minor league system, basically NXT, him going to Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown, well, actually, in my opinion, that's not going to help him because I just don't really feel like WWE will make Adam Cole like he has been in NXT for years. As soon as he enters, let's say, Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, he's not going to be the name that he was in NXT for the past several years. So you look at that standpoint, he might not be as big of a name. He's not going to be on the card every single week like he was in NXT. He might not have these big time feuds like having against Pat McAfee, but he's making the money. That's the interesting part. But then the AEW side, he might be making quite a bit of money. His friends might give him a little bit, too much money just so he could go to their company and get eyes on their product. But he would have the creative control and different things like that to some extent. It's very, very interesting. AEW would benefit so much from signing Adam Cole, but like I mentioned, I just really feel like WWE would benefit so much more because you lock that person out and go into AEW. And the difference between Adam Cole and most wrestlers, he doesn't have that chemistry and doesn't have that friendship with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega like most of the other wrestlers in WWE. So if you're able to sign a guy like Adam Cole, who is literally dating the world women's champion AEW, if you prevent him to going to AEW, that really proves Adam Cole how much he believes in AEW. So that means maybe some other guys who are free agents. For example, let's say Sami Zayn or Dolph Ziggler. I don't know when those guys are free agents, but those are some of the better wrestlers in WWE. If WWE can prevent Adam Cole from going to AEW with his friendship and his girlfriend, they could totally prevent these guys like Sami Zayn and Dolph Ziggler into going to companies like that. So I really feel like this benefits WWE so much, and they would definitely have a major win here if they can retain Adam Cole.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that 100%. That it seems like they cannot let him go. They cannot let him appear immediately on AEW. Or any other company, but the other companies that are not in the position that AEW is. If he had a non-compete clause, even 30 days, although that is not much, it might have not been all that dramatic. Seeing him go, seeing him get seeing him become a free agent. But he just completed a big feud, obviously, with Kyle O'Reilly. He's as you said, the greatest wrestler in NXT history, the longest reigning champion, if I'm not mistaken, of NXT. And his recognition has only increased during his time in NXT, and his golden era to say in a way is not over, meaning that he would have impact on AEW's assets. If he goes there immediately, he will have a huge impact. That would certainly not be the way if he had to wait 30 or 90 days.
And I know lots of people are hoping that Adam Cole would, let's say, debut tomorrow at Dynamite. And, the Young Bucks have teased it. Britt Baker, his girlfriend, has teased it. That's the one thing I don't like about AEW, that they don't make these huge surprises. For example, when Miro debuted last year, he was Rusev in WWE. Nobody really expected that to happen. That was a major surprise that was not talked about at all. And even Sting last year, they, in my opinion, I don't really like what they're doing with Sting. I don't think he should be wrestling. I mean, he's over 60 years old, but the way it was an actual surprise. Nobody really expected it. When the Young Bucks teased that Adam Cole could possibly re-sign with AEW, and Britt Baker is basically teasing as well, I don't really like that, because I want to be surprised when there's a return, like Brock Lesnar. I don't really think many people expected that to happen. But I don't expect Adam Cole to be on Dynamite like some people think tomorrow. I think that's way too soon. If you're going to do it, I would say you do it right. I think All Out would make some sense because, think about it. In my opinion, I would say AEW is going to have the most pay-per-view buys by a far in All Out, because CM Punk's debut match, his first match in 7 years, going against Darby Allin. And you have some other nice matches as well, like the Young Bucks Steel Cage match. For example, that's that's something I just now thought of that actually could make some sense. The Young Bucks going to be a steel cage match. They're having the Lucha Brothers, some other people wrestle. The number one contender will fight the Young Bucks in a steel cage match. What if Adam Cole would help the Young Bucks in that steel cage match and help them retain the title? Just something like that would kind of make some sense. And I with the pay-per-view buys, with the rumors of Adam Cole, CM Punk's debut, I think it would make a lot of sense for All Out if I'm AEW. Tomorrow would just be stupid. I know you're having CM Punk be on Dynamite, but don't overdo it all at once. Don't have a week where you can get, let's say, 1.3 million, as opposed, let's say you have 1 million, like consistency. Don't have all your viewers watch one episode. Expand it out so you can consistently have around that 1 million mark, a little bit more. But I think Adam Cole to AEW, obviously it makes so much sense. But if you're going to do it, I think All Out would make the most sense in my opinion.
Oh yes, that I agree with. Obviously, Eric Bischoff talks a lot about this on his podcast. You need to control the expectations, because if it's always good to have high expectations. High expectations means that you're going uphill. There has been an upward trend. Your product is good, therefore people will expect it to at least continue being that good to that extent. But if you have high expectations, if you've set them too high, you cannot justify them. Of course, you've set them too high by teasing things to happen at a particular date, at a particular event, and you cannot justify. For example, this was I think this was the reaction to a big extent. This was his analysis, by the way, to a certain extent, of Christian Cage debuting at Revolution, I think, and with Paul White, I think they also promoted a big signing when Paul White debuted, and those two things, obviously, with AEW, with the position in which AEW is, when you tease a huge signing, people are going to expect. Hell, they might have expected CM Punk when Christian Cage debuted. Obviously, Christian Cage is a big name to sign with AEW, but when people expected somebody like CM Punk, they're not going to be thrilled when they see Christian Cage. Same with Paul White. So if you don't control the level at which your expectation towards you are set, the reaction towards your product may not be as good as it could have been. Maybe it might not be as good as aimed even. So that could always be a problem. This is why the Sting debut worked so well, and always, of course, for other reasons as well. But All Out, for example, a great opportunity to do so. You can get some of the people who bought the pay-per-view but do not watch as much Dynamite, to try draw them into the product, to not just for the upcoming Dynamites, but overall for all AEW events, to try just to develop your television assets, as we mentioned, and to just use a big moment like a main event at All Out to just raise the intensity of your major storylines, and in that way of all of your storylines.
And something else I completely forgot. AEW, they're having that big event in New York at Arthur Ashe Stadium, and there's over 20,000 seats there. They keep on promoting that, and that's interesting because let's say Adam Cole debuts at All Out, whether it's helping the Young Bucks or just an appearance. The Arthur Ashe Stadium, there's something going to happen there. It's just a matter of what. There has to be a reason they're building this up. You're not just going to build this big event up and there's not going to be a debut. We saw what Rampage did this past Friday, and CM Punk being with AEW. People expected it, and when they build an event up this big, there has to be a surprise. So with this Arthur Ashe, this with the stadium, and next month in New York, there has to be somebody big, in my opinion. I believe it was Dave Metzler. I'm not 100% sure, but he mentioned, obviously with the CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, that's pretty much confirmed. And it's crazy that AEW has signed CM Punk and people aren't even talking about Daniel Bryan. I mean, those are two really big names. But he also mentioned there's also another big name that's expected to sign with AEW. It's very interesting to me because I think Daniel Bryan debuting on AEW Dynamite, at the Arthur Ashe Stadium makes the most sense because it's going to be a normal, episode of Dynamite on TV. People can, watch it. You don't have to pay $60 to watch a pay-per-view to possibly see Daniel Bryan show up. But with this possibility of this person, it's interesting because you think right off the bat, it's probably Adam Cole. But then you think, CM Punk's coming back to wrestling. Who would say that AJ Lee, his wife wouldn't either? She's not wrestled in a long time. There's lots and lots of rumors about Bray Wyatt. This is just so interesting. I don't think anybody could have possibly imagined that AEW could have signed all these people and have these big names, and especially within a span, let's say 3 or 4 months. Adam Cole, All Out to me, I would say makes the most sense. But that Arthur Ashe, situation there in New York, it's so interesting because I would say that's Daniel Bryan, but with the possibility of another signing, I have no idea who could possibly be. But it's one of those situations that you brought up, and you make a great point. When Tony Khan and AEW announced there's going to be a wrestler debut, and it's going to shock the wrestling world. When it's Christian Cage, people thought it was going to be CM Punk. Some stupid people thought it was going to be Lesnar. It was never going to be Lesnar. He's WWE loyal. He cares about the paycheck, and that's it. But when you build it up, it has to be somebody big. It's to the point when Daniel Bryan is already signed with AEW, when CM Punk is with AEW, when Lesnar's with WWE. I have no idea who that signing could possibly be, but I feel like it's one of those situations, like you said, with Christian Cage. We're going to expect to be this some huge guy when all these top free agents in wrestling are already signed. I feel like that signing will really let some people down, but I'm very, very interested to see who that signing could possibly end up being.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that the event in Queens at Arthur Ashe Stadium, and this is a very important event for AEW. Obviously, it's not it's not as big as a pay-per-view. It does not have the importance in terms of the whole AEW landscape, because of which I think the All Out is a better event to introduce a wrestler. Although it depends where on the after which match on the card you introduce him. But obviously Arthur Ashe, the event, the Dynamite, they're not just an event. It's very big because it's an event. It's obviously Arthur Ashe Stadium is not just a normal New York venue. It's the venue of U.S. Open tennis tournament. This is a chance, one of the chances for you to connect with the general entertainment community. Therefore, you need a big show there. You need to promote the strengths of your show and to try to connect with them, which just makes it another opportunity for them, another big opportunity for them to introduce a new signing. So that should not be ruled out as well. But of course, you had better keep the expectations not that high, because even if you introduce Daniel Bryan, if you haven't built him up as much, this is gonna make a huge buzz when he surprises so many people. But if you build something well, with so many free agents signed, it's difficult to build up something bigger. But if you build up Daniel Bryan and end up debuting another wrestler who is not as popular, not as liked, even why not, as Daniel Bryan, this is gonna end up being a disappointment. And as we said, in an important event like the AEW at Arthur Ashe Stadium, this is gonna be doubled, if not tripled. To say in a metaphorical way, it's gonna be a bigger disappointment than it would be just have it on Dynamite.
And the thing I'm loving about the Daniel Bryan, signing, that it hasn't been talked about in weeks for the most part. And that's the thing I like about, Brock Lesnar came back. Nobody knew it, at all, which I really like. I like the surprising. I don't like reading rumors weeks before it happened, like, CM Punk. That was, CM Punk and Tony Khan, you would admit it, that was pretty much the worst kept secret. Everybody knew about it by the time it happened. But when you have a signing and you can keep it like on the down low and quiet, and you debut like Brock Lesnar, I'm not really going to say Becky Lynch because I feel like most of us knew. Even John Cena, him coming back a month ago after at the pay-per-view, and I feel like, they signed CM Punk. It was, to the point everybody knew it was happening for the most part, but all of a sudden, the Daniel Bryan, the whispers and the talks about him have basically gone away. I feel like that's AEW kind of like purposely trying to make this, not talking about them. They're wanting to keep this on the down low, and like at that event at the Arthur Ashe Stadium, then him appear. That's going to make it so much more intriguing and shocking. Because let's say if people, haven't really paid much about this Daniel Bryan situation, you might not know that he is signed with AEW. So when you watch AEW Dynamite at that event, and if he shows up, that's going to make a major shock because nobody has heard about that rumor and the talks. I think that would be perfect by AEW. And with, the Adam Cole situation, and, with, there's other free agents as well. And with this big time signing, it was apparently somebody aside from Daniel Bryan. You don't know who that's going to be. I would say it's Adam Cole if I had to guess, because I don't see Bray Wyatt going to AEW right now. That just does not make sense to me. I'm very intrigued how that would turn out. I don't see AJ Lee going back to wrestling right now, but it's very entertaining. But AEW, hopefully they don't make this into like a Christian Cage, like you mentioned, build this up and it's somebody. We don't really want it all. But, we haven't, there's a couple more topics. We've been talking about wrestling for over an hour now. I mean, when I said there was lots of big wrestling headlines, we were not joking. I mean, we spent an entire episode's length of just talking about 3 topics. But, I mean, like we're saying to start the show, this is the best and most intriguing wrestling has been in years with all these debuts and signings and free agents and everything. So it's going to be very interesting. The future, especially in the next couple of months for AEW and WWE, to see how, close these ratings are and see where, Adam Cole goes or who's the next signing and stuff like that. So, we don't have really much more topics. I know you're a big New York Jets fan, and I'm not a Jets fan, but I'm a big Zach Wilson fan. Zach Wilson was 9 of 11 for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Green Bay Packers over the weekend. So what were your kind of thoughts on Wilson's performance against Green Bay?
Well, his performance was very good. On the other hand, it shows nothing new. Really, as we said, everything is set up for Zach Wilson, despite the move of the Jets replacing Sam Darnold with Zach Wilson not being good at all, because they could have had other assets instead of replacing a quarterback who was not that bad with another quarterback. But apart from that, Zach Wilson, everything shows all the numbers and all the and everything that has made quarterbacks successful before, and their transition successful. You can see that in Zach Wilson. Last year he was number 2 in terms of completion percentage in the NCAA. Yes, there are some concerns because of the competition he faced with BYU. That doesn't make his accomplishments worse. And it's accurate quarterbacks in a league like the NFL, which values a lot more, the pass, which just isn't tolerant to quarterbacks that run the ball first with a few notable exceptions, of course, like Lamar Jackson. But Lamar Jackson also shows that it's very, very that the tactic, the strategy, the scheme, and coaching is very important. The whole ecosystem of the team is very important. But overall, most of the quarterbacks that are gonna be successful in the NFL, that are gonna have longer careers in the NFL, are gonna be guys who are good at passing, who are accurate, and accuracy shows that of course you have to look at workload and the sample over which that accuracy percentage was achieved. But accuracy percentage is the best way to evaluate a quarterback. Of course, competition also should be considered. And Zach Wilson just if preseason shows anything, it's always been doubtful that it shows anything because Andy Dalton had a bad game. Now he's been named the starter for the Bears regardless, or at least it seems like that. It's doubtful what if the preseason really shows anything, because again you have the same concerns. Competition in the preseason after the first few drives is not relevant to the regular season. Yet Zach Wilson is having both his outings in the preseason so far has been tremendous. One of the best rookie quarterbacks with little doubt. 9 for 11, 128 yards, a risk-free day, interception-free day in a way. He's been free of any headaches, and that might continue into the regular season. It certainly has all the ingredients for it to continue because he has but just a small margin improved receiving corps. It could have been much better. That's why we talked about the whole Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson situation. Or just situation around the Jets' first pick in the draft. It seems like it has a much better offensive line than last year. Although that's the same thing we thought last year. But now you still have a first round draft pick in at guard. You have a couple of players that are potentially could be healthy for the whole year. So much better supporting cast. Zach Wilson. He seems at least he could be solid. Everything that we thought is at least confirming until now. It has been confirmed, although those confirmations have little relevance as regards the regular season. And the only problems that I could see heading into the regular season because it's getting closer, 2 weeks, he might not play in the last regular season game or the last preseason game for the Jets, although we don't know. As we talked, the running game, the Jets lack sufficient running game. They lack a sufficient running game stable. It seems like all their problems are concentrated there. And no matter how good your quarterback is, no matter how good quarterbacks everywhere in the NFL have been, their success is always hit when they have to take up the whole offense as a baggage. They don't have support of a running game. It means too high of a workload, and this means less efficiency. It means that they're going to have more problems when they have to just play by themselves. Doesn't matter that how good of a quarterback is, because many quarterbacks without a sufficient running game have had many problems. So it just goes to show that the running game for workload purposes is just as important as are the direct reinforcements to the quarterback, which are the receiving corps and the offensive line. But everything that we've seen by Zach Wilson until now is not unexpected, absolutely normal, but also with little importance in terms of having consequences or being impactful, or actually being indicative of his capabilities throughout a National Football League regular season game.
Alex Robson, he was on my show last week. We did an AFC East preview, and he's a big New York Jets fan as well. I was telling him Zach Wilson was my favorite quarterback prospect heading into the draft. I liked him more than Trevor Lawrence. If you were to tell me one of these guys were supposedly a generational type of quarterback, I would think that you're talking about Zach Wilson, not Trevor Lawrence. But before I kind of get my take on this, you mentioned Zach Wilson. The final preseason game for the Jets is this week. Zach Wilson? Obviously, he's going to start week 1 for the Jets, but we're not totally for sure who the backup for the Jets is going to be yet. They signed Josh Johnson. They have some other guys as well, like James Morgan. They have Mike White. do you think the Jets should play Zach Wilson in his final preseason game? So his last game, he was nearly perfect and ended on a high note, or so it's like a battle up for quarterback number 2, or do you think he should continue to play in the final preseason game and see how he performs before the regular season?
There's little reason to play him. He's already proved that there are not almost any kind of concerns as regards him. Also, at the same time, there is no reason why you shouldn't give him at least a drive or two, because you have the final preseason game now. Then you have a weekend off, if I'm not mistaken, and then you have the week 1 Sunday games. So those are not immediately, and it's not like he's gonna. There's not like there is gonna be tiredness from 1 or 2 drive. There's not there. There are also not big injury concerns. So yeah, it would probably be smart to not use him as much as you used him in the first 2 games, but it would also be good to give him just a, a couple of drives to make sure that there is continuity, that there is consistency, and for him to just get him as much time on the field as possible before the real games come about.
And that's a very interesting, because I feel like you can benefit from both of those deals, like not playing Wilson and playing Wilson. But there's also at times there's kind of disadvantages of not playing him and playing him, because you don't want to take a chance of him getting hurt. Because obviously we saw what happened last week with Carl Lawson. Messed up his Achilles and he's out for the year. But let's say if you do play him, he could get hurt, or he could be really bad or something like that. But it's very very interesting topic. I feel like either way, I feel like the Jets, if they play him, that would be smart. If they don't play him, I think it's a little bit risky, but I understand why they wouldn't. But with his performance this past week against Green Bay, it was just so impressive, and he did this without Elijah Moore, the second round draft pick from Ole Miss, not playing. His connections with their free agent acquisition from the Titans, Corey Davis, was just fantastic. Him and Corey Davis were phenomenal the whole day. I mean, he had as many touchdowns as he had completions. I know you mentioned earlier people knock on his competition at BYU, which to me is kind of ridiculous and really annoying, because I would rather have a guy like Zach Wilson. He's played great against lower competition last year, than have a guy like Trey Lance, who has potential to be great. But I'm not saying I'd rather have Zach Wilson in the future than Trey Lance. I think both those quarterbacks are going to be really good. But people do not knock on Trey Lance for playing one game in college football the past year and a half. He only played one game last year. That was against Central Arkansas, and that was his worst game, in my opinion, as a starting quarterback. And he ended on that note and a very, very sour taste in people's mouth, scouting-wise. But I would rather have a guy like Wilson, who's not playing. Who's playing phenomenal against not as good competition, as opposed to Trey Lance. His last game, he sucked. I do not get that knock on Zach Wilson at all. And the thing with the Jets, I mentioned it on my thing last week with the AFC East preview. They have far more talented players surrounding Zach Wilson than they did with Sam Darnold, and I really feel like that's going to benefit Wilson. I mean, they have Becton, the tackle from Louisville. They traded up to get Elijah Vera Tucker, the guard from USC. They have Corey Davis. They had Elijah Moore. They had only Micah. They only had Becton with Sam Darnold. All three of the other guys I mentioned are new. They have Michael Carter, the running back from North Carolina, who's a rookie. Denzel Mims, who I think he's going to be really good. They have surrounded Zach Wilson with the talent that they did not give Sam Darnold. They do not want to have Zach Wilson and not give him enough talent and realize that's what they messed up on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was not really great, but he didn't have the talent that Zach Wilson has around him. And I don't think the Jets will win a whole lot of games this season. I keep going back and forth. I can see them winning between 3, 4, maybe 5, something like that. But I really see this Jets team being competitive in so many games because the unpredictability with Zach Wilson. I know the competition and everything like that, and I know it's preseason, and preseason, if anything, shows people overreact with preseason, far more than they should. But it's the fact that Zach Wilson so far has kind of been proving what people expected them to be. In camp, a lot of people were mad at Wilson. He was, sucking in training camp, or he's just doing really bad. And now he's playing great, really proving the doubters wrong early on. I want to see him kind of continue that trend with the Jets. But I feel like this Jets team, they're going to be very entertaining. Like, I feel like they're going to be way, way, way more competitive than people think. And I really feel like if they can maybe get 5 wins or so, maybe 6, don't be surprised if Zach Wilson wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like, I am so excited for him. I mentioned it last week as well. If Zach Wilson and Joe Burrow were in the same quarterback class and the Bengals had a number 1 pick, I honestly might have chosen Zach Wilson. That's how much I like him. I think he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback, and the Jets are in a great position to succeed in the future.
Zach Wilson. We mentioned last time around that one of the best quarterback prospects in the last few years in the draft. This might very well be the case that the Jets have a bad season record-wise, and still Zach Wilson wins the Defensive Rookie of the Year because as we mentioned a lot. One of the worst stats for quarterbacks, by the way, let's mention that is win-loss records, because there's so much assets around the quarterback, so many assets around around the team that are needed for a team to function in a winning way. And then you have other assets that are needed for the quarterback to function well. That just make that the whole labeling the wins and losses just on the quarterbacks, it's absolutely irrelevant, absolutely ridiculous. So Zach Wilson could have a phenomenal year. The Jets might win. Well, if they win 0 games, it might turn out that he didn't have a good year, but they might win 3, 4, 5 games. He could have a better year than any, not just rookie quarterback. He might have a better year than any quarterback in the past that was drafted in the past 2 or 3 years. Well, he can't have a better year probably than Josh Allen, but everyone else he might very well outplay. And the Jets might end up having a bad year because of their secondary, because of their pass rush problems. They've lost Carl Lawson now. So Zach Wilson is absolutely in contention to be one of the best, not just offensive rookies, one of the best rookies overall, one of the best young players overall, if you don't count Patrick Mahomes as a young player in the entire league.
And if I had to pick a quarterback this year who was drafted, one of the quarterbacks between Trevor Lawrence, Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Matt Jones, if I had to pick one of those quarterbacks who's going to break Justin Herbert's incredible records last season as a rookie, I'm 100% taking Zach Wilson, because we're not for sure if Trey Lance is going to start week 1 for the 49ers. The Jaguars are not going to be – they're not going to have many wins. I feel like the Jets are in a similar situation, kind of like the Bengals last year, because the Bengals they sucked last year. Not being biased, they won 4 games. They had 2 wins with Burrow until he got hurt, but they were inconsistent. But there were times in ways they competed with these playoff teams. They had 2 one-possession losses against the Browns. They had lots of games or they just played a little bit better, or a couple of things happened, they could have ended up winning. I really feel like that could be a situation with the Jets this year. I did a thing I posted a tweet the other day. The 5 teams I think will surprise people. I didn't have the Jets on there, but if I had to have 5 teams I'm most excited about watching, I feel like the Jets, in my opinion, had to be towards the top of the list, because I don't think they're going to win a lot of games, but they're going to be super competitive to the people who think, you're watching, let's say, the Jets and the Dolphins. The Dolphins might win by a field goal. The Jets played really good or something like that. They played much better than people think. I feel like that's going to be kind of situation with New York this season. And I mentioned the Dolphins. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Jets maybe beat the Dolphins this year. I think they're capable. And Zach Wilson, to me, you're looking at all the rookie quarterbacks this year. In my opinion, he 100% has the most potential out of any of those quarterbacks. And it's very, very interesting. And we kind of talked about, if the Jets should play him this week. And it kind of goes to our last topic. The last week of preseason, it's very interesting because, these undrafted free agents, this is their final chance to, try to make the final roster and everything. But it's also very interesting because you're looking at some of these, camp battles, who some of these guys might start week one, and, quarterback battles and different things like that. So, if Wilson plays, if he doesn't play, it's interesting. But who are some of these, top players you're watching out for in this final week of preseason this week?
Okay, so so quarterbacks, you have to probably go with Mac Jones and Justin Fields. I would actually, you're talking about with the quarterbacks with the best potential all around the regular season out of the rookie class. Mac Jones, I might be even more excited about than I'm about Zach Wilson. He was more accurate than Zach Wilson last year, with better competition as well. The only problem is that he might not be throughout the whole year the starting quarterback for the Patriots because they also have Cam Newton. But now during the preseason, he has got the carte blanche to do it by himself. Mac Jones to prove that he deserves that starting spot, and his quest is going to continue in the third week, in the final week of preseason. It almost seems like you're better off. You might be better off going with Cam Newton, but Mac Jones is going to continue putting pressure on that spot, and I think no way of knowing what he's going to achieve until he debuts, because the NFL game is also different from the. No matter how assessments we make based on collegiate stats, you also have to take into account that he's going to take a hit. In terms of his numbers are going to take a hit because the transition to the NFL is going to be very tough. But there are reasons to believe that the same way I have reasons to believe that Zach Wilson is going to succeed, and Mac Jones last year was even better than Zach Wilson was last year for a team that competes in a better conference. Justin Fields he's not going to be the starting quarterback for the Bears in Week 1, but if Andy Dalton's Week 2 performance in the preseason showed anything. If it showed anything, it could show that Justin Fields might get the chance to prove himself in the regular season sooner rather or later. And overall, this quarterback battle is going to continue being intriguing because it's going to continue being a quarterback battle into the regular season. Now, Nick Foles, he's the third stringer right now. It seems like he's the third stringer, little doubt about that, and he's not in a good situation. It doesn't seem that he's gonna get cut, because then the Bears will have to take on at least $10 million in dead cap. But he's not gonna get a lot of chances. At least he's gonna get less chances than Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. It really looks like he has disappointed a lot more than those two. As Andy Dalton last year, around better talent on the Cowboys, had one of his best years in recent memory. So Andy Dalton showed that of course, every quarterback needs reinforcements to succeed. We talked about that. They're direct, like the wins and losses are not only on the quarterback. This is a ridiculous stat, as I mentioned, and he proved that that there is still that he still got it. There's still a lot of football left in him, or at least a year of football left in him. And easy to see why the Bears went with Andy Dalton in Week 1. It also easy to see why people should believe his performance with the Cowboys, which was throughout 9 starts. This is more than half of the year that he started, and he also appeared in 4 games without starting, which either because of an injury to Dak Prescott or otherwise. Easy to see why people should believe that a lot more than preseason performances. It just goes to show why preseason regular indicative of a lot of things. Yet it is good for one thing, deciding roster battles. And this remains a roster battle. This remains a battle for a starting spot in the Bears, in which we're currently set to see Justin Fields and Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's not going to play though, but we're currently set to see Justin Fields and Nick Foles. When it comes to the defense, the Cleveland one of the names that should be watched is on the Cleveland Browns, and a linebacker called Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa, who might be in a position where the Browns have to hope that he should that he can play at a successful level in the regular season, because Mac Jones, he exited in the Browns' first preseason game with a shoulder injury. Nothing has indicated right now that he will miss significant time, also, this is just a continuation of the trend of him being injury prone, quote unquote. So Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah might be somebody that the Browns, with a team that seemed with very few holes, very few needs at the particular one moment this offseason. They have one of the deepest offensive rosters in the league. They also made significant progress on defense. That almost seems weird for them not to, if they have a bad year, and for a team that almost had no needs, it seems like the strides, like the tables have turned to a limited extent, because they'll now have to rely on a player like Owusu Koromoa. Despite all of that, he had a pretty good performance in week one. He led the team with 8 tackles, with 8 total tackles, 7 solo tackles. He had also a sack and 1.5 tackles for loss, I think. So this is going to be very important for the Browns. A very important situation for the Browns, that they'll hope that a player like Owusu Koromoa can continue his success into the regular season if Mac Jones's problems continue being drastic to the extent that they have been, and they have been because he started 14 games in his rookie year, but last year he only started 8. He had injury problems, and now it seems like those injury problems could continue, and then Owusu Koromoa will have to perform at a pretty good level. So Owusu Koromoa might be one of the most important players to watch throughout the league in the third week of NFL preseason football.
Yeah, you mentioned Justin Fields. To me, regardless of how good Justin Fields performs this week, if I'm the Bears, I am 100% starting Andy Dalton week 1. And I know that might be an unpopular opinion. You know, he's had a good preseason game. And, you know, like I said, preseason is nothing more than overreaction. People are already wanting Justin Fields to start. I don't think people realize that the Bears play the Rams, who, in my opinion, are at least a top 5 team in the NFL. You don't want Justin Fields' first NFL start going against Aaron Donald. Like, that has potential to be just a disaster. But I feel like maybe Dalton starting week 1, or if they're competitive against the Bengals week 2, it's interesting. I don't think Fields should start till probably about week 3 or 4, in my opinion. It's interesting, but regardless of how good he plays, I don't think he should start. But that is somebody who you have to keep an eye on him, because it's so interesting. You mentioned Matt Jones. He's not really performed like people have really thought he would so far. Matt Jones, to me, I feel like he's like, when the Patriots drafted him, he's like a you know what you're going to get. He's not going to be phenomenal, but he's just really, really smart. He's accurate and stuff like that. But I'm interested with that. I do think Newton starts week 1 for the New England Patriots, though. Trey Lance, that's something that's very intriguing, because you don't know whether it's going to be Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo starting week 1 for the 49ers. You know what you're going to get out of Garoppolo. He's very injury prone. Trey Lance has not played great yet. But I feel like if I'm the 49ers, you have a better chance of winning a Super Bowl with Trey Lance rather than Garoppolo, because, you know, teams who are studying against Trey Lance, they might not know his tendencies. There's not a lot of film to watch him, so you don't really know how he's going to perform in certain situations. And Jamar Chase, that certainly has to be on the list because he had a couple of drops in the Bengals game last week against the Redskins, and people were already calling him a bust, which is so freaking stupid. Because Peyton Manning threw around 30 interceptions his rookie year, and I cannot imagine Peyton Manning playing today now. Because if he had a year like that, or a quarterback had a year like that, they would already be out of the league because people call him a bust. Jamar Chase had 3 drops, and people already call him a bust. But Penei Sewell, the offense tackle for the Lions, who lots of people say the Bengals should have took, he is absolutely sucked. So to say that Jamar Chase is a bust throughout one preseason game before he's ever played a snap in the regular season is extremely stupid. I'm excited to see Chase play. I hope he gets like 200 yards, something like that. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but I want him to play phenomenal to really shut up everybody about how bad a performance he had last week. And then to me, by far the most intriguing position battle in the NFL. I don't think it's talked about enough. I cannot wait to see who the starter is. The Denver Broncos quarterback situation, whether it's going to be Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. Last year, I was so high on the Denver Broncos. I was stupid enough to have Drew Lock as my MVP pick. Obviously, did not pan out. He was horrible last season. He was injured a lot. The Broncos had so many injuries, like Cortland Sutton was out for the year. Von Miller was out. They had players, last year opting out due to the coronavirus and everything. Then, in the offseason, instead of drafting a quarterback when Justin Fields was there, they elected to take a corner, Patrick Surtain from Alabama, and they traded to get Teddy Bridgewater from the Panthers. And they did not trade a top pick for Bridgewater. They traded a late-round pick. And it's very interesting because Bridgewater, you know what you're going to get. You're going to have those check down passes, those 5 or 6 yard passes. That's going to be about the extent of Bridgewater. Drew Lock has started 18 games, and people are already starting to write him off that he should no longer be the Denver Broncos starting quarterback. 18 games is basically just one regular season. And, there was multiple games of those games he's performed and he started in that he did not even finish because he's got hurt. So he's actually, start to finish, he's not even played 18 full games as a starting quarterback. And people are already starting to say that Bridgewater should start for Denver. People do not know Drew Lock's potential with Denver. If Drew Lock can be consistent, not great, not really, really good, just consistent, like 220 yards, a touchdown, just turnover-free football, and, all right. The Denver Broncos are easily a playoff team. They have so much young talent. I don't think people give them enough credit. And another thing with Lock, he's only started, I believe, 18 games, so people really you've not seen a ton of film of him. You don't know some of his tendencies and stuff like that. And another thing, let's say the Denver Broncos named Teddy Bridgewater the Week 1 starter. That pretty much confirms, in my opinion, that Denver is done with Drew Lock. Because if you name Bridgewater your starter over Lock, they really have no purpose of Lock. I think Lock has to be named a starter. Both the quarterbacks have performed very well in preseason, but I think it has to go to Lock. This is an extremely intriguing position battle, by far, in my opinion, the most important one in the NFL right now. Because I feel like if you have Bridgewater as your quarterback of Denver, you're expecting 6 or 7 wins. If you have Lock as your starter for Denver, I think you can get maybe 9 or 10. It's very intriguing. I cannot wait for this. How they play the final week. And if it's not named Drew Lock, I will be surprised and I will be extremely ignorant by the Denver Broncos coaching staff.
Yeah, that's also gonna be a very, very interesting one. It's difficult to see the Broncos not starting Lock because it's difficult to see them giving up on him this early. Although, if the bad performances continue this year, he has a similar to last year, then the situation could be entirely different. Now it seems like it's Drew Lock's position to lose. And Teddy Bridgewater, well, he's been solid as a backup previously. He was with the Saints. He was very solid as a backup. He could potentially replicate that. He hasn't been quite able to do that as a starter. And it might be that might not come if Drew Lock has a good season. So It seems right now he's in the pole position.
I mean, there's so many interesting camp battles. As we head into the final week of preseason this upcoming weekend. I mean, with Zach Wilson performing great against the Green Bay Packers, so it'll be interesting to see if he can have another duplicate his performance and have another great week. I mean, we talked about wrestling for over an hour. I mean, we pretty much gave you detail to detail any possible thing in wrestling right now. With CM Punk going to AEW, Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch going back to the WWE in surprise turns at SummerSlam, and why, despite those returns, are good for WWE, the storylines and everything just don't really make much sense with us. Adam Cole possibly going to AEW to reunite with his friends and his girlfriend, or possibly staying in the WWE. Like we mentioned, top players to watch out for this weekend. Wilson going off against the Green Bay Packers. This has been a really nice episode. Covered a lot of things. Talked about an hour and a half and just about 4 topics. I mean, we really, in detail, pretty much about everything. I thought this went really well. So, Teodor, can you tell some of our listeners who can follow you on social media?
Of course, thank you, Jordan. Guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Teodor Tsenov, the same way it's written down here, and on Instagram at TRDO Gaming. In Twitter, I share all my articles that I write for Overtime Heroics. I also share when I bring it back. My podcast, Last Man Standing with Teodor Tsenov, it mainly focuses on the sports, but on the field of the business and the television ratings of sports, and as well as everything that I publish, you can see on Twitter, and a lot of my important publications you can also see on stories on Instagram. So be sure to follow me.
Make sure to go follow Teodor on all social media platforms that you mentioned. I'll put the links in the description below so you can follow him. Make sure to follow me, the Sports Behind Show, on Instagram and Twitter. I would really appreciate it. If you all can like this video and subscribe to my channel, I would really, really appreciate it as well. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you all next time on the Sports Behind Show.